Everybody got quiet all of a sudden, like it's something fixing to happen.
I know, right? The countdown.
If you have a cell phone, would you please place it on silence so there's no disruptions? Make sure your mics are on. Good evening and welcome to the Coffeyville City Commission meeting for Tuesday, February 27, 2018. Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Doug Mund of Grace Fellowship Church. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Let us bow our heads. Lord God Almighty, Creator of heaven and earth, we ask you tonight to fill us with the knowledge of your will through all spiritual wisdom and understanding. We pray this, Lord, in order that we may live a life worthy of you and that we may please you in every way. Help us, Lord, to bear fruit in every good work. Help us to grow in our knowledge of you. Strengthen us, Lord, with all power, according to your glorious might, so that we may have endurance and patience to do the work that you have set before us, so that we may bring hope, so that we may bring renewal, so that we may bring revival, so that we may have restoration to our community. Bless our city employees, those who daily take risks for our safety, firefighters and police officers, and for those others on the job whose risks are not so visible, yet they encounter risks every day for our benefit. Bless our commissioners and give them wisdom and grace in their decisions and leadership. Lord, we joyfully thank you for these new buildings and remodelings. Lord, we pray for a spirit of restoration over our city, and we praise you, Father, and thank you for all that you have done. Lord, we pray all these things that we may bring your light to our city on this hill. We pray this, Almighty God, empowered by your Holy Spirit, in the name and character of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Mund.
Thank you.
Tonight's consent agenda, City Commission meeting minutes for Tuesday, February 13th, 2018, and 2018 appropriation ordinance number AO-18-04 in the amount of $4,799,436.52. Are there any questions or comments that need to be made or adjustments to these two items on the consent agenda?
Not that I know of, and I'd make a motion. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Mayor Bauer to approve the consent agenda as presented. Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster. Aye.
Item number 3 on the consent agenda, action to appoint Mike Shook as Director Number 2 and Tony Lawson as Alternate Director to the KMEA Board of Directors. Do we have any questions or comments or revisions to this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve this consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Doan to approve the appointment of Mike Shook and Tony Lawson to the KMEA Board of Directors. Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye. Item number 4 on the consent agenda, 2018 appropriation ordinance number AO-18-04A, Isham and Lieberts in the amount of $384.50. Do we have questions, comments, or amendments to this item on the agenda?
It doesn't look like we do, Mayor. So I'll move to approve appropriation ordinance as read for adoption.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Mayor Bauer to approve appropriation ordinance number AO-18-04A for adoption. Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster,
Abstain.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Moving on to old business, ordinance number S-18-01, second reading of an ordinance to approve the annual renewal of the 10-year property tax incentive for four-state maintenance at 75%. City Manager Kendall Francis will make comments.
Mayor and Commissioners, as this is the second reading, I did want to make some clarifications from the first time we met. As you will see in my staff report, I've tried to pare it down to, in my mind, bring the facts more clearly before you. As we know that this issue has changed over the life of this exemption, and based on the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals clarifications of the factors that are to be utilized for this exemption, I'm going to make the recommendation again that we approve 100% abatement. Those, just to clarify, those four factors are the number of jobs, the average wages, excluding management, the sales tax generated, and the local sales and taxes generated. From our first meeting, it was presented that in 2008, four-state maintenance referenced that there was 43 jobs, and to clarify that, those 43 jobs that were mentioned were both full and part-time positions. And as per the Board of Tax Appeals, only full-time employment is truly allowed to be calculated. And if you'll remember, our basis that we used was 30 full-time employees. That is the number that should have been used starting in 2008. In 2017, I verified, physically verified through 1099s and W-2s that four-state maintenance employs 34 full-time employees, which would be an increase of 4 employees from the start of this exemption period. State statutes only require that one job be created. You'll see some accompanying documentation from the Court of Tax Appeals that states that fact. So in my opinion, that requirement has been met. The second requirement was wages. The Montgomery County median wage is $15.38 an hour. Four states' current average wage is $20.63 an hour. So the fact that they're maintaining an average wage that exceeds county median income ensures that the local economy is seeing the benefit and the impact directly from those employees. The accompanying ordinance S-08-11, as you'll see highlighted in my staff report, says specifically that based on the projected wage level of new jobs to be created, by for state maintenance and in the expansion project, an analysis of other factors of the project will benefit the local economy. It was clear in the original ordinance that the commission wanted wages to be considered when reevaluating this exemption. Their annual sales is the third issue. Again, as we refer back to the Board of Tax Appeals, it refers to a cost-benefit analysis of the applicant's operations to determine the financial impact of granting the tax exemption, including the effect on state revenues. As you'll see outlined, 2017, the purchases that were subject to sales tax was approximately $385,000, which equates to roughly $25,000 in state sales tax. The purchases over the life of this exemption equates to a little over $2 million, which figures to be about $127,000 in state sales tax generated. And that was figured at 6.25%, which is basically the average from when it started in 2008 to the state sales tax rate of today. And then finally, the impact on local economy, the taxes. Again, we refer to the ordinance that based on the projected wage level, the new jobs to be created by for state maintenance, the expansion project, and an analysis of other factors of that project that will benefit the local economy. As you look at those wages, let's first look at the wages that taxes generated from the employees based on federal labor studies. Average employee salary expenditures equates to roughly $15,000 this year, or 2017, and over $111,000 for the life of the exemption. Then we also point to the personal property taxes that are being paid, as we need to remember that this exemption is only for the 10,000-foot expansion of their warehouse. So they are still paying personal property tax. Again, that's approximately $21,000 in 2017 and nearly $200,000 over the life of this exemption. And then local sales tax generated, purchases subject to sales tax in 2017 equates to about $11,500 in local sales tax that were projected, or that were paid, and over $60,000 in the life of this exemption. I think it is apparent, it's quite clear to myself, that all four of the requirements have been met, and therefore I again would ask that you would consider granting 100% tax exemption.
Questions from the
Yeah,
commission?
I got a question, Kendall. I
Yes, sir.
didn't bring all the stuff. I saw your stuff, but I didn't realize it was gonna get into all this again, quite like you presented tonight. I saw your email. I got read, I initialed each and every page of it here in my 3-ring binder. The document that I sent you that had
Yes,
6
sir.
pages, 4 pages, 6 pages, I think it was 4 pages actually. Is it not evident by reading that the primary deal was to create 1 job a year? Was that not evident to you, with all due respect?
Well, in
Because
my,
all this other stuff, you know, at the time the deal was made, I don't think it was that heavy. It didn't weigh in as much from reading that 4-page document. And that 4-page document is what was read to the commission and was voted on. So,
I do believe that they projected 11 jobs over the life of this exemption. They clearly have not met that projection. However, they have far exceeded expectations salary-wise. To your original question, was that some of the basis of the exemption? I would say yes, that is. But I would also point out that midway through the exemption, about year 3 or 4 of the exemption, city staff realized or was advised that we were holding them to standards that we shouldn't have been. And that's when they started looking at these other factors, and that was at the recommendation of the Court of Tax Appeals. I I think the city has failed, and I will take the blame for that because I was here during part of that time. We should have amended the ordinance or made some kind of official change to the documentation. The ordinance does state that the commission has the authority, the leeway, if you will, to consider other factors and make the decision based on those other factors. And when I came here my first year, that was kind of how it was explained to me, that the commission was using that authority and as they saw appropriate. Again, it doesn't excuse the fact that as chief administrative officer, we should have made those changes. It puts us in a situation where we're having to use our own personal thoughts about it. I'm not speaking very well, or
It's all right.
being
You're
very
doing
eloquent
fine,
about
Caleb.
it. But instead of having it set out and clear-cut definition, we're to this position where we're trying to defend something that isn't written down, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it.
So, from my standpoint, it was written down, and Jim presented it, and I think he showed it to all of us that what was presented when this was written, and I'm still in favor of the 75%, and I would say in order to fix this, let's fix it. So next year we don't have this same problem. Because it's open for interpretation, and
Correct.
Commissioner Doan, Commissioner Taylor, myself, Commissioner Van Oster, and Commissioner Williams may all have a different opinion on how this thing should work out. I think we heard that the last meeting. We heard from 0 to 100, and we settled on 75%. And I'm still inclined to stay with the 75% from my standpoint. I think had it been maybe presented a little more clear to us and corrected last year or 7 years ago when we identified the problem, instead of just continue to roll it on and on and on, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. Because as Commissioner Taylor said, the idea, the way it was written, was that we would that they would create 11 jobs. And so that's where I'm at personally. So anyone else have comments?
Well, we beat this thing to death.
Yep.
And, I appreciate each and every business that's out there.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to.
It is a negotiation somewhat. Things change over 10 years. Like Kendall
You're
said,
correct.
things change. And our sales tax is down 300,000. If our sales tax was up 300,000 and this and that, you gotta weigh the whole thing out. This deal stands on its own. I go back to the original agreement. I said it. What are we gonna do about our sales tax being down 300,000? What are we gonna do about it? That's a whole nother topic, okay?
Right.
There it is, over there, okay? But you gotta take everything into account when you're managing a business or managing a city, and I'm glad Four State's here. I'm glad they didn't move up yonder. I'm glad a bunch of other businesses are here, not leaving Coffeyville. So we need each and every business. We've actually lost some business here recently, and it's gonna hurt the ones that are here a little bit. So anyway, I'm still in on the 75%. I think I said last year that I could vote. I could not vote for anything less than 75%, or more than 75% would be the right wording. And it went 100, and I voted no. I'm still in at 75, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none,
May I say something, Mayor?
absolutely.
I just want to reiterate something that the city manager said. The ordinance itself does give you the flexibility to vote however you want to. The document that I think that you're referring to is actually a memorandum that a prior city staff member had prepared regarding the creation of 11 jobs. the ordinance itself doesn't talk about 11 jobs being created. It just gives you the factors that need to be considered. It doesn't reference 11 jobs in particular, and it does give you the flexibility. I just want you all to be aware, and I know you know that already, but
Sure.
Well,
you have the flexibility to go up to 100% if it's your will. You know, going back and redoing the ordinance, we'd have to sit down and figure out what the criteria are going to be. And I do think going forward, that city, working with Gilmore Bell, intends to have this a little more objective than subjective, because I think that's really been an area of difficulty for the city, especially when it comes to, you know, considering those factors that you have to consider.
Right.
thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank
A
you.
good point.
Any other questions?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number S-18-01 for adoption, as written.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Taylor to approve ordinance number S-18-01 for adoption. Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Ordinance number G-18-03, second reading of an ordinance to amend the minimum rental standards. No changes from the first reading. Questions or comments from the commission?
No. And I'd make a move to approve ordinance G-1803 for adoption.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Commissioner Doan to approve ordinance number G-18-03 for adoption. Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Moving on to new business, resolution number R-18-09, a resolution to issue general obligation refunding bonds for the electric utility. Tom Clayco, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Calico.
Calico. Springstead will make comments.
Good evening.
Good
Don't worry,
evening.
Everybody has trouble with it. Tom Calico with Springstead Incorporated, the city's financial advisor. So what you have before you on this agenda item is a resolution which would declare the intent of the city to issue general obligation electric revenue bonds for the purpose of refunding, basically refinancing some existing electric utility debt. So let me rewind the tape and give you a little bit of history. So back in 2015, when we were financing the new electric generation facility, we had to issue two series of debt. The first was a tax-exempt series, about $49 million, and the other was a taxable series of a little over $12 million. I'm happy to go into why they were taxable and tax-exempt. It had something to do with the nature of the Grand River Dam Authority, but there were two series. The tax-exempt series, the larger, was sold as long-term bonds. The tax-exempt series was actually purchased by the underwriter we were working with at the time, J.P. Morgan, and it was purchased ostensibly as a short-term financing. There was a mandatory tender in 2018. It's June of this year. The reason why it was short-term in nature had to do a lot with the marketplace at the time and concerns that we wouldn't be able to find a buyer for a long-term taxable bond of this amount and of this nature. And J.P. Morgan was concerned that if we went out to market with the two long-term bonds, the tax-exempt and the taxable, and we were unable to find a buyer, that basically the entire financing for the generation facility would fail. And rather than take that risk, the decision was made, well, let's go ahead and JP Morgan buy that as a short-term investment, with the idea being that in 2018, we would likely refinance that as long-term bonds. And there are a lot of good reasons for cities like Coffeyville to go with the long-term debt rather than short-term. Short-term certainly has its attraction because you're getting the benefit of short-term rates, which are lower than long-term rates, but you stand a couple of risks. One of those risks is that when you go to refinance your short-term obligation, that rates will have risen. The other is what's called takeout risk, which is that when that short-term financing comes due, there's some interruption in the market, which then prevents you from doing your refinancing. And if you're prevented from doing your refinancing, then you've got to write a check for the entire amount due, which in this case is $12 million, which would be obviously a great challenge. So the thought was, okay, we'll do the short-term financing, but we'll go ahead, we probably won't roll it again and do another short-term financing. We'll do long-term debt at that point. So we're now there. So the resolution that you have in front of me basically declares your intent, but doesn't bind you to do so, but declares your intent to issue these general obligation / electric revenue bonds. The important thing to remember about this is that these are what are called double barrel bonds. So they have two forms of security. They have the revenues, the net revenues of the electric utility, and your general obligation, your full faith and credit pledge. And there's some real advantages to going this route as opposed to a straight electric revenue bond. Because of the general obligation pledge, the rates will be lower. And I think we estimated, I think it was about $3.5 million estimated interest cost savings going with the dual double barrel bond versus the revenue bond. And that's using today's rates. Obviously, that's going to fluctuate with rates. But there's definitely interest cost savings. Your intention, obviously, is to pay it from the electric utility. There's nothing that says that you have to pay it from taxes. As long as you have electric utility revenues available, that's how it'll get paid. So the resolution would, like I say, declare your intent. There is a notice and protest period for this under state statute. So there'll be, once it's published, there'll be a 20-day notice period during which a protest petition could be filed. Once that's accomplished, the schedule that we anticipate is your new electric utility rates would be adopted in March, and then we would issue the bonds soon thereafter. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I'm over my head on this one.
Well, let me help
We
you.
talked about, when are we gonna vote on this thing?
Tom, what is the timeline
Tonight.
for actually voting to approve it? I mean, tonight, we're just issuing intent.
Intent. So immediately after the notice and protest period, so I think I can access it. I think we have a rough calendar, but essentially, what's now late February. So we would do it immediately after the notice and protest period, so sometime late March.
So maybe our second meeting in March.
So how's this, I mean, I don't, like I said, this first time we've talked about it. And, what do you think about it, Paul? Have you looked over it pretty good?
Well, we have bond counsel that would guide us through this. That's Gilmore Bell, and if they're happy, I'm happy.
Okay,
It is just a refinancing of an existing obligation, so I don't see any problem with it.
okay.
And I mean, if it helps, there was a meeting of the entire working group, which is city staff, Springstead, Gilmore and Bell, and we all met. We went through all the different alternatives, and this was the one that everyone agreed was the most,
Good to know,
the
thank
best,
you.
the best alternative.
Yeah.
So on this adjustable rate thing, you think that's gonna be okay? If that's the way to, I mean, adjustable rates, and they're talking all these rate increases.
Well, that's exactly the point. So right now, we have a short-term financing, which could be rolled into another short-term financing. And that essentially is a way of doing, like you say, adjustable rates or variable rate. What we're proposing is to go totally away from that and to basically issue long-term debt that would fix, it's basically fixed-term debt.
Okay.
So it would be fixed for the remaining term. So
So
we're
if you
moving,
had to-
we're
yes,
moving away
stability.
from,
Okay.
we're
I got
moving
it.
away from the
On it then.
variability.
Huh?
Stability.
Yeah, so what would you guess that would, based on your wisdom and knowledge, what would you guesstimate that to be? I'm sure this was discussed in your meeting.
Yeah, and and I've got it, I have it, I didn't bring it up here to the podium with me, what our latest estimate is. I can certainly look, I can boot up my computer and take a look, but I don't think I've got that, in front of me unless, I'm gonna look to Stephanie to see if she has a printed copy. Do you have a printed copy of the estimate we did? Okay, I'm happy to pull that out,
I
but
don't
it's,
We've got time to talk about it later.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to dig into it
Right.
right now.
Right.
What do you think, Paul? Later?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're gonna have plenty of.
okay. Good enough, Tom.
any other questions?
Any other questions from the commission?
So if for some reason the revenue isn't coming in from the power plant, GRDA, whatever, then what happens?
So if
What's phase
for-
two?
If for some reason the net revenues from the electric utility are not sufficient to pay the debt service, then you would pay it from your general taxes. And you would be required under the bond covenants to increase your mill levy if necessary in order to do so.
Would it be that way either way we went?
Well, and that's a really good point. So let's say we issued just straight revenue bonds. And the utility revenues weren't sufficient. You do have to ask yourself the question, okay, would you default? Or would you find the money elsewhere to make up whatever's needed to pay the full debt service? A lot of Kansas City, cities in Kansas will issue utility debt, water, sewer, electric, as general obligation, simply because it saves a lot of money. You get a much lower rate. They don't have any intention of defaulting on their bonds. So they have to ask themselves the question, well, if you don't plan on defaulting, why wouldn't you just take the lower rate?
Right.
Okay. Makes sense.
And I would offer that tonight is just issuing intent.
Yep.
Between now and the time, we could put together a work session to talk more and discuss this in more detail.
I'd like to
I
know more.
think we should do that. I mean, I don't have a problem with issuing an intent tonight, with the, I
It
guess the
does
caveat
not
that we.
bind you to anything.
Right, as long as we're not held fast that we're gonna do this, so. Any other questions from the commission? Seeing none,
Actually, I have a couple. I was here when we decided to move forward with this new generation. And I was, to break it down to the simplest terms, it was proposed that we pay for it through the capacity payments issued by GRDA. And now I'm hearing we're gonna have to pay for it on the back of the taxpayers if we default. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm gonna ask Tom to come back up. I don't think that's quite accurate, but
No, the answer is no, and if I gave that impression, I apologize. The source of revenue to pay this debt has not changed at all.
Okay.
It's still anticipated. We're only discussing the financing tool, but the sources of revenue have never changed.
Okay. And the current bonds that we have issued right now for this electric generation, if the electric revenues weren't sufficient to pay those bonds, they would still have to be paid through the full force of the taxing
Well, they would have to
authority
be,
of the city.
they'd have to be paid in some form or fashion. So that, let's take, for example, the 2015 Bs, which are the tax exempt series that were,
Mhm.
that was issued. So they're straight revenue bonds,
Okay.
are payable from net revenues of the electric utility. So if for some reason the net revenues weren't sufficient, you would have to find some source to pay them, whether you raise electric utility revenues, you raised electric utility rates, or, you know, you turn some other place, property taxes, sales taxes, what have you, you know, you'd still have to pay those.
And
That-
and
that's
everybody
ours.
knew that when they voted for it, should have
Right.
known it
Right,
when they voted for it in the first place.
right.
Either you pay it or
Right.
or you file bankruptcy.
Right. And, you know, I mean, you could defaulting is,
default.
it's not a realistic option,
Right.
you know, for a city, because
Right.
your debt essentially then becomes junk, and it really does impact your ability to do
Yeah.
business, so
Was
it's
that
not, not really much of an option.
What I'm
Right.
trying to do is clarify the perception that, because it's kind of perceived that way. But, okay, thank you.
And,
I mean,
you know,
Chris, while we're talking about it, was that ever discussed amongst the commissioners at the time? I mean,
Yes,
$70 million or whatever. What was the total cost? 70,
no,
58
54
or
million.
54?
roughly.
Where was that 70 come from? Huh? Okay. Where was the 70 at one time, Mike? That was very early on. Okay, okay, good. Well, that's good to know. I've been telling everybody 70. Okay, good. Well, you know, it's overwhelming, okay? It really is, but, I suggest that we all pray that GRDA makes it. Can I get an amen?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's all along we thought that. Okay, good deal. Tom, thank you. What do we do now?
I'll move to approve resolution number R-18-09 for adoption.
I'll-
I'll second.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Van Oster to approve resolution number R-18-09 for adoption. Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Resolution number R-18-10, resolution to execute an agreement with the Kansas Department of Commerce for a community development block grant. Public Work Director Chuck Shively will make comments.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, last October, the commission approved application documents for a potential $330,000 CDBG grant from the Kansas Department of Commerce for reconstruction of 10th Street from Camden Street to Gillum Street, similar to the recent project on 9th Street, except this one doesn't include sidewalks. On January 17th, we were notified that our grant application was successful. I attended a grantee technical assistance workshop in Salina last Wednesday, where I received the grant agreements and the related required documents for the grant. The grant agreement and the resolution to authorize execution of the grant agreement are attached to my staff report. So I recommend approval of the resolution authorizing execution of CDBG grant agreement number 18-PF-019 between the City of Coffeyville and the Kansas Department of Commerce. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission?
No,
I just have a comment. I think this is a great opportunity, you know?
I think it'll be good.
Yeah,
I think it'll help that neighborhood.
absolutely. Any other?
and there, so again, for the public, besides us, okay?
Yep.
The cost of what percentage do we pay?
A little over 50%. The grant is for $330,000. The city share is $400,000.
Okay.
And the reason we didn't request a $400,000 grant is the number of people that live in that area. There's a maximum $2,000 per beneficiary. So 330 was the maximum we could request.
Okay, good. No more questions.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, thank you, Chuck.
Well, with that said, I'd make a motion to approve resolution R-1810-10 for adoption.
Second.
Motion was made by
waiting.
Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Mayor Bauer to approve resolution number R-18-10 for adoption. Commissioner Van Oster,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution number R-18-11, a resolution to execute a supplemental agreement with the Kansas Department of Transportation to exchange federal funds for state funds.
Mayor and Commissioners, beginning in 2011, KDOT implemented a program called the Federal Fund Exchange Program. Through the Federal Fund Exchange Program, KDOT voluntarily distributes a portion of their federal fund allotment every year among the eligible entities based on their population. There is no federal requirement that they share any of those funds. It's voluntary. Since the program uses federal funds, all projects paid with those funds must meet all the federal requirements such as Davis-Bacon wage rates, federal design standards, federal labor standards, environmental review requirements, and all the other federal requirements, all of which adds significantly to the cost of the projects and the length of time required to complete the projects. But through the Federal Fund Exchange Program, KDOT offers to exchange federal funds for state funds, which don't have the federal strings attached, at an exchange rate determined by KDOT. Then the city can spend the state funds on almost any transportation project we choose, and KDOT will use the federal funds on one of their large federal projects that already has those strings attached. From the beginning, the Federal Fund Exchange Program, through last year, the exchange rate has been 90 cents on the dollar. In the past, the Federal Fund Exchange Program also allowed entities to bank their funds for several years to do one large project rather than several smaller annual projects. Last year, KDOT determined that they were losing too much money through the Federal Fund Exchange Program at the 90% exchange rate. They also determined that allowing banking of the federal funds by some entities for several years was making it difficult for KDOT to meet federal requirements for timely expenditure of federal funds. So KDOT is making some changes to the program, beginning with the 2018 federal fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2017 through September 30th of this year. Those changes are banking of funds will no longer be allowed. All funds, whether state or federal, must be spent and reimbursement requested by September 15th of each year. The exchange rate will be determined by the Secretary of Transportation each year, and the exchange rate for the current year will be 75 cents of state funds per dollar of federal funds. Attached to my staff report is the proposed supplemental agreement number 1 to our existing master agreement for the Federal Fund Exchange Program, including those changes recommended by KDOT. It also includes attachment A, which is the request to exchange federal funds. The amount of federal funds allotted to Coffeyville this year is $121,800.62 to be used for a federally approved project by next September. If exchanged for state funds, the amount will be $91,350.46 to be used to reimburse the city for whatever street project we choose to perform by next September. This proposed resolution authorizes execution of the supplemental agreement and the attachment A request to exchange federal funds for state funds and any of the other documents necessary to receive the funds. So I recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute supplemental agreement number 1 to the original master agreement between the city of Coffeyville and the Secretary of Transportation for the Federal Fund Exchange Program, including attachment A to exchange the federal funds for state funds at the exchange rate as determined by the Secretary of Transportation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Okay, you wanna exchange this, you wanna do this, you've looked it over, Chuck.
Yeah.
You wanna do this exchange.
Yeah, and we've been doing it for several years. The difference this year is we're getting less in the exchange
75 instead of 90?
instead of 90.
Well, what federal project would we have that we'd get the 100% on?
We don't really have one lined up, and it's not possible this year. We just got
Okay.
notice,
Okay,
and
so-
we would have to have it meet
Okay.
all those federal requirements, design it, and build it
That's what I
by
wanted to hear.
September.
Okay, I hadn't heard that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know there was a question about.
Yeah, I had a question because I had asked, why
Um,
did you, why
I
did we find
talked to
out
them,
in
and then I
February?
remembered what they had told us at the
Yeah.
early meeting. They were still waiting to be notified by the federal government of what their allotment was. The federal government has a problem with getting a budget so
Okay.
that they can know what
Okay.
they're doing. And actually, they told me they still don't know the exact amount, but they went ahead and notified us, because they wanted to try to
To let
get
us
the
know.
projects moving,
Okay.
so,
Yeah, because there'd be no way you could do
yeah.
a federal
and-
project in
I
6.5
mean,
months.
Yeah,
Right.
you can look like
Schedule it
this,
and everything.
our CDBG project is a federal project.
Right.
We're looking at bidding it next year,
Okay,
because
so,
it's gonna take that long to get through all the requirements and get
Paperwork.
it designed.
because, because we've agreeing to, I mean, if we agree on this,
Yes.
the difference is 31,
Yeah.
about 31,000 because we're trading.
That's right.
That's better.
Yeah, we
75%
could lose the
is better
funds
than nothing.
altogether if we don't have it
Yeah,
constructed.
and we don't want to lose it. But I was just curious because the letter was dated the 8th of February, and I
Yeah.
thought,
October was a long time
yeah,
ago.
the fiscal
Yeah,
year, and it began in October.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that answers my
Did
question.
you run the math on that, Anne Marie?
Yeah,
You run the
I
math
did.
on-
She did well.
I'm trying to find some money.
So, what do we have on the agenda for $91,000?
What we do normally is we just consider those funds one of our source of revenue for our Transportation Capital Improvement Fund. And what I typically do is when we do our street resurfacing project, then I just submit that with the request for funds. They send the funds and we put it in that capital improvement.
I'd say the last two ice storms have done quite a bit of
It's done a
work
lot
on
of
our,
damage,
a
and
lot
the
of
rain
damage to our
recently
streets.
has
Yeah,
done some-
I've noticed potholes that
Yeah,
I never noticed potholes before.
they're out every day
Yeah,
patching.
I know.
Take a good look at 12th Street, would you, Chuck?
Yeah. I've been down
I have no other questions.
Thank you, Chuck.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. Anybody else have anything?
Nope.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R-18-11 for adoption.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Van Oster and seconded by Commissioner Doan to approve resolution number R-18-11 for adoption. Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor, Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Resolution number R-18-12, a resolution to execute an engineering service agreement with High Potential Power Services for the electric utility. Electric Utility Deputy Director Mike Shook will make comments.
Good evening, Mayor Commissioners. The item I bring to you for your consideration this evening is to secure services to provide electrical engineering, maintenance, testing, and support services for the electric utility. The utility owns and operates 6 electric substations and 7 electric generating units to provide reliable economic electric service to our residents, businesses, and visitors. To provide the most reliable system possible and to meet federally mandated NERC requirements, the electric utility must perform certain testing on high voltage electric equipment on a scheduled basis. Staff issued a public request for proposals from firms that could provide these necessary services for the electric utility. Proposals were scored on services offered, their approach, availability, experience of the firm and staff, and finally cost of services. We did receive proposals from 7 firms. The city has used the services of Criswell Engineering for the last 10-plus years for these services. Effective January 1st of this year, Criswell Engineering has transitioned the firm to an employee of the firm. The firm will now be operated under the new name of High Potential Power Services. J.R. Hampton, the new owner of the firm, trained with Criswell Engineering on our system, and as part of the transition, Mr. Criswell has committed to remaining as a consulting engineer for the new firm. Excuse me, I got a cold. Providing additional support and expertise. High Potential Power Services has retained the same rate structure as Criswell Engineering, having not increased their rates in over 9 years. Staff requested hourly fee schedules to perform services as listed in the request for proposals, with High Potential Power Services being received as the lowest rate proposed. The not to exceed amount of $150,000 a year is for scheduled maintenance items only. Any additional electrical engineering and support would be billed separately. Therefore, staff recommends the mayor be authorized to enter into an engineering services agreement for substation maintenance, testing, and support services with High Potential Power Services, LLC, for the amount not to exceed $150,000 per year for fiscal year 2018. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may
I
have.
take it you got standard hourly rates or
Yes.
unit rates already?
Unit rates for the labor and equipment as well.
And that
Testing
hadn't gone
equipment.
up for 9 years?
Not 9 years.
What do we pay now?
Pardon?
What is our,
It's hourly.
The hourly rates, I believe it's listed in there, I believe it's 120 an hour.
yep, okay, thank you.
And what we've
20
done,
hour for what? For
Pardon?
what?
engineering, electrical engineer. What we've done in the past is, we'll go out for RFPs every 3 years and see what kind of pricing we get and what kind of services are out there. We bring this to the commission on an annual basis to get approval, but we only go out for RFPs every 3 years.
I guess let me ask it different. What has been our spend towards the 150,000 every year? I mean, if we
A
come in
couple
at
of years we went
120,
over, a couple of years we've been before, just below.
Right.
Part of it goes towards the generation side, part of it goes to the substations, part of it goes to the generation.
okay,
I think we averaged last year around 80,000 on top of the 150 just for extra support. It just varies depending on the issues that we have.
okay. Questions from the commission?
I don't have any questions.
Seeing no questions, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R-18-12 for adoption.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Taylor to approve resolution number R-18-12 for adoption. Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Thank you, Mike. Resolution number R-18-13, a resolution to execute a contract with G&G Dozer for the demolition and disposal of 7 structures. Code Enforcement Officer Tammy Dixon will make comments.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Tammy Dixon. I'm the Code Enforcement Officer for the City of Coffeyville, and I'm here tonight to present bids for the demolition of 7 structures within the City of Coffeyville. We held a bid opening on February 22nd, 2018. We were presented with 3 bids, and my office is recommending the contract go to G&G Dozer. As you can see, they were the lowest bidder, and this office has worked with G&G on many projects over the past 6 years.
Okay. Well, Tammy, you've looked it all over.
I went out and
No.
drove by all of them, and I'd say they are all
They are all,
all blighted structures that
Yes.
need to
they are.
be addressed.
So what happens to these properties? Jump off topic a little bit. What happens to these properties?
'Cause the-
You know, the land.
Unfortunately, what normally happens, most of these properties are probably already behind on their taxes and probably already up for tax sale, sheriff's sale through the Montgomery County. If they're not, the homeowners will walk away. They'll come
They
to
can
us.
pay it if they want.
Yes, absolutely. We send them the bill and we give them that time, but
Right.
unfortunately, most of the time we don't receive it, and so the taxpayers of Coffeyville end up paying for most of the demolition that happens.
Right, okay.
And
And then they sell the land at a tax sale.
We forgive that.
Right.
The taxpayers pay for that. They'll forgive that and try to sell those vacant lots to get them back on the tax rolls
Okay,
through the Montgomery County, not the city.
right.
Right.
Okay, well, I got a couple questions, but I'm gonna wait till we're done voting on this thing.
Okay.
yeah, the only one that I had a question on was the 205 South Spruce house and garage. And I drove by it, and it looked like, is there still people living in it?
Probably not legally,
Okay,
okay?
I mean,
We have a lot of individuals that live in the houses
I understand.
until,
Yeah. So, what do we do in those cases?
I get together with the police, we do the best we can. After I placard the property, you're not supposed to live there. If you are residing there in a blighted property, you have 30 days to remove yourself, and you can come and go to get your belongings, but you're not supposed to reside there. We get complaints, police run out, we try to chase them out. We boarded some up, the ones, if you'll drive around, you'll see some that are boarded up that we've had the most complaints with, or we feel are more dangerous. With people running through them. Some of them are more, the ones that have sustained fire are more dangerous to the general population. So then we bid those out also, and we just board them up. That's the best we can do until we get the funds to demolish them. I've got another 21 structures going through the title search process now. Then we'll be taking them, I'll be taking them to court, then you'll see me again.
I guess so if there's still items in the house that belong to people, what do we do regarding that? You know, like, for instance, this house, because when I drove by it, it looked like there was still livable items there potentially.
Did
Like,
you go up? Because there's
I
hole
didn't
in
go
the
all the way
floor.
up.
Okay, because you can't get in because the hole's
Okay.
in the floor, because
Yeah.
they've already crawled under the foundation and
Gotcha.
stripped everything.
Okay,
I don't think there's anything
Okay.
in there that you're gonna,
worry about?
no.
All right.
Yeah. The first time I really actually enter the entire property is when we do asbestos inspections. It's up to me to go clear the house, to make sure the inspector's safe and to get in there. And there's,
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I think Jim had some comments.
Well,
They-
I mean, I can ask you, Tammy, afterwards, but we might as well talk about it now, I guess, so you can sit down. How many bladed structures, houses do we have that probably need to be torn down? Because I've been kind of driving around looking lately. How can you inform us about that?
Well, I will tell you something I recently did. I showed Chief Roski. Through our GIS system, I went on there. I probably have about 150 already on my list to try to keep coming through. They pop up, guys, yearly. It'll be one I haven't noticed. I'll be like, what? It's deteriorated due to no electric and people running through them. We have a group of people that strip everything.
Right.
So I did an overlay plan that I was just playing with the GIS system because I've been here 6 years, so I'm getting a little bit better at everything. And I went on there and you can do stars, circles, squares, And I have a map, which I could, if you guys came to the office, I could actually show you of the little over 200 structures that I've been in charge of taking down since I've taken the job 6 years ago. I've taken down a little over 200 structures. The ones that are on the blight list, the ones that are on I have a list that if they're occupied, I'm not interested, and I don't think anybody else in Coffeyville is interested in putting a homeowner out of their home for any unnecessary reason. But a lot of them are on the list. They're probably probably wouldn't meet minimum standards, guys, but they're inhabited at this point. So it's just something that's on my radar to continually watch to make sure they stay inhabited. If not, then I would definitely go out and place the placard if they became vacant. Also, there's a lot of sheds and garages, and I've tagged those differently, but I have a map with an overlay that would show you the areas, and you can see from the 200 I've taken down, it's been all over Coffeyville. It's not in one area. It's not, unfortunately, in a condensed area, I've been north, south, east, west. So, we tried to look at, when I did this package, the next package I did, I went onto that map. It was a little easier for me to see, sometimes we get a better deal if we can stay in a general area and they don't have to move as much. So by doing this map, instead of reading all the addresses and trying to figure it out, I can actually visually see now. And so I tried to pick structures that have been on the list for a longer amount of time in a generalized area where I feel like then as citizens, you're gonna see a bigger difference when we do take them down.
So you said, Tammy, you've done 200 homes in
Yeah.
6 years?
Yeah, and that's just the ones, not including the ones that the homeowners have. I've worked with a lot of homeowners that have taken structures down. I think there's probably 29 where the homeowners have either taken their house down. That's not included, garages also have been, sheds that we've worked with, or people I'm currently working with that are trying to come up with the funds to take their, they know they have a structure or a garage or whatever, or a house that's dilapidated, working with them to try to get them to take it down instead of it resting on the taxpayers.
How many homes are in Coffeyville?
Oh, that's good. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not,
We can look at that later.
okay, I'm not
So
sure.
we had about 225 structures with the flood that came down. I
Yeah.
think it was 225, wasn't it?
I thought it was in 300, Bob. How many was it? I wasn't here during the
Yeah,
flood,
it was
so
2007. I think we had 210 or 225 structures.
it was around that number.
225, that included garages, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
So wouldn't be near that many homes, but anyway.
yeah.
So
And
that's
most of these weren't related to flood.
right.
Yeah, there were a few left when I first came in, that were damaged in the flood that way. There's still a couple, actually, that probably, I don't know if I can think of one, but most of these are just due to dilapidation, disrepair, people moving and then just walking away, basically, from them. A lot of bank-owned properties.
Any other questions?
Kind of easy to see why our tax structure keeps dropping. Okay, nope.
Move
I-
to approve resolution number 18-13, R 18-13.
I'll second it. That beat you?
Motion was made by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner Taylor to approve resolution number R-18-13 for adoption. Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Discussion with Montgomery County Fair Association about the 2018 Interstate Fair and Rodeo to include the sale of alcoholic liquor.
Before we get started on this, I have one question. We're talking about liquor, right? Not CMB?
Correct.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Luke Carr, President of the Montgomery County Fair Association. This is Lana Stoltz. She's one of our beverage chairpersons. First of all, I'd like to thank the commission and the city for all your support over the years. Without you all's help, we definitely couldn't put on our event. As many of you may have seen, we've made a lot of changes to the fair this year. We were an 8-day event, and we've changed that now to a 5-day event, mainly because of our trying to decrease our expenses.
Okay, I'm sorry, Luke. You're doing what? You're going to, how many days?
5 days total
Instead of,
8.
okay.
Yes, sir. I say to decrease our expenses, try to keep it afloat because, you know, as in several of these discussions tonight, you've noticed that our local economy is down. And so, you know, we see it every year. Our numbers are down, you know, continually. So we're hoping that by shortening it, that we'll be able to increase our revenue a little bit. Just looking for different avenues to increase that, and one of the ways is by gaining more national sponsorship. And one of the national sponsors for professional rodeo is Pendleton Whiskey. But to be able to gain their sponsorship, we have to be able to sell their product. We know that you know, it's a big responsibility to be able to sell that. And we would, you know, do everything in our power to control it and keep it under control, by having it in a, you know, fenced off area, secured with security guards, whatever it took to try, you know, to do our due diligence to keep it under control. So that's what we're asking for.
So I guess, how big of an area are we looking at? Are we looking at like a tent? Are we looking at the arena area? Or, I mean, what, I guess where are our heads at as far as where we think if,
We currently sell beverages at 2 locations, one underneath the VIP tent, and the other one we made a green barn, and we sell it out of the green on the east side. We're looking at either putting it right next to that in a fenced-off area, just right there by our green barn, or we have one other location, but we're waiting for bids on to build that structure still. But that's 2 of our options, to build a fenced-in area or a tent right there by our beverage garden that we already have.
and would we require, if they purchased it there, they would have to drink it in that area?
Yes, they are
correct?
not
couldn't
allowed to come
leave
in or
the area.
leave with anything, yes.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify.
Right.
Didn't want to make sure we weren't having mixed drinks and walking around the
Right.
fair and rodeo. It's kind of hard to monitor that.
Yes, sir.
So, I don't want to attack the messenger, so I'm going to try to keep it civil. I'm absolutely opposed to this. I struggle every year with the CMB issue, but I voted for it every time. Here's my concerns. Number one, basically you talked about finances and the struggle that the Fair and Rodeo Association is having to keep up more or less financially. So you're shortening the Fair and Rodeo from 8 to 5 days.
Yes, sir.
How much revenue do you think that you're going to make by selling hard liquor?
I really don't have a number, you know, or an estimate. You know, our beer sales every year, I don't know what our total was last year
I don't have
off
the
the top of
number.
my head, but, you know, really, I can't answer that this time. I could get that.
Do you think it's going to be significant? Is it? Let me ask you this: is the problems that it's going to create, or that it could potentially create, outweigh the benefits that you're going to receive financially by selling hard liquor?
Well, our hope is that, you know, like I said, we can, you know, keep it under control and, you know, just like with the beer sales, you know, not create any extra problems for us or the, you know, officers.
And do your people now? Liquor is a whole different animal than CMB. Okay, all your people that you're gonna have sell this are gonna have to go through background checks, right? And you're gonna pay for those background checks.
We would do, I mean, follow through with whatever we would.
You have to do background checks on any.
Yeah.
Am I right, Paul? Anybody who sells CMB, and also you're gonna have to have. I mean, you just. I think you're getting into something that is going to be horrible once you figure it out what you have to do. Have you guys reached out to the ABC and talked to them about this?
We've just done research online and, you know, to see what process you have to go through in order to get the license from the state.
And being this is an open air event, man, I tell you, I think you're going to have problems. I really do. I would. I really think that you guys should do some more research before you decide on this. And I tell you who you need to contact. You need to contact a guy named Fletcher Hill.
Okay.
And you need to talk to him. And after you talk to Fletcher, I think maybe you should come back and if you guys are in agreement with this, because I think you're gonna find out it's a whole you're biting off a mess.
Who is he?
He is the agent with the Kansas Department of Revenue that's going to be licensing your event, and he'll be the enforcement agent as well. And like I said, you're going to have to do background checks on all your people who you're going to have sell this alcoholic liquor. There's all kinds of things, and you're going to have to really research this, because you can get in a lot of trouble if you don't. And just and I really don't know if the revenue that you're going to see from liquor sales is going to offset the stigma of families coming out there where liquor's being sold. I think you really, man, me personally, I think you're going to have a hard time offsetting that. That's just my opinion.
Those same thoughts came to my mind, because this first time we've heard about it. Luke, have you guys, I mean, what's your capacity? Are you president of the Fair Board this year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You haven't done any research? I mean, how many other fair and rodeos serve liquor? Statewide, nationwide? What percentage of them? I mean, you gotta know something, Luke.
I know the state fair up in Hutch sells it, and of course they just have it in garden areas. I'd like to know more about that before I vote on it. Okay.
Before you get my support, I'd like to know more about what the numbers are.
Okay.
What percentages of rodeos in the state of Kansas or in the region do that? I mean, I'd like to know more about it before I could vote. I'd have to know more that they would support it, and then the things that would be the positives and the negatives.
Okay.
Because this is a little bit of a hurdle here.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to come and find out,
Yeah.
was what we would need to do.
You gotta start somewhere.
Right.
Okay.
And here's another thing too, and you're not aware of this, is that CMB, which is cereal malt beverage, which is a 3.2% alcohol, basically beer. On liquor, you can go up to who knows what. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I struggle each time, because no offense to Mr. Doan down there, but getting ready to offend you. But here in a couple months, we'll get a request from some entities, local entities, that will request money to assist with substance abuse issues. And then on one hand, we're giving them money to fight substance abuse, including alcohol. And then on the other hand, we're sanctioning an alcohol event. So you're trying to figure out which way to lean there. And and maybe it's just a stigma in my mind, because it's hard liquor, but it presents a lot more problems. It really does. And I will tell you that I'm not just saying this because I'm setting up here. I'm saying this because I've got 21 years experience of dealing with this stuff. I would encourage you wholeheartedly to contact Fletcher Hill, and he's a good man, and he'll tell you all the basically the sneaky stuff that you're going to have to deal with, because there are a lot of things that I don't think you quite know yet that you're going to, like the background checks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Research the problems, if you will.
It's a big hurdle you're gonna take on that not real quite for sure you're yet there.
Yeah. Well, we can sure do that, and like I say, come back and try to answer those questions. Like I said, we wasn't sure where to start, what we needed to get, so I would just come and ask.
And this wasn't for a vote, it was just.
No.
Just discussion. Right.
Does that answer your questions for discussion? Do you
Essentially,
need-
basically, Jim, you're looking for percentage of rodeos that sell hard liquor in Kansas.
Yeah, or the region, whatever information you can get.
Okay.
I mean, you start with Kansas, Oklahoma, you know, Cowboy, this is the cowboy capital, you know, this area, I mean.
Yeah.
But this is, you know, a Cowboys area. I guess Kansas and Oklahoma, something like that.
Okay.
We're gonna have to, you know, we're gonna have to know more somehow, and then if you get any questions, you know, if you send them to the city manager, he'll get them to us, right? That's
Yeah.
how you do that.
Yeah.
You send them to him, he sends them to us,
Okay.
okay? So,
Mayor, I'm gonna assume you guys are gonna want some kind of defined security plan or layout for where the area that you're intending to utilize. I mean, before you come back, I would have that defined.
Okay.
And what processes that you have in place to prevent people from walking around, or what other things. I think that will be.
And the other thing is, are you guys gonna increase your security budget to try to handle these extra problems that you're gonna have?
We would add, you know, to secure that area, and then, you know, if we thought that we needed more, you know, just in on the fairgrounds too, then we would look at that as well.
To clarify, the ultimate goal is really the sponsorships. Isn't that where the large money would come from,
Right.
not necessarily the sale of the?
Right.
how much, I mean, we'd be interested to know what's,
That's what I was
that
gonna
kind of
ask.
information.
Okay.
We need information.
Okay.
You know, you
Well,
gotta
I can
sell this
find
thing
it.
to us. Look, you got a big sales job here.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd wanna approve it.
I believe the board was kind of waiting on what the decision was before Pendleton.
Yeah.
Was
before we
contacted.
approach them, you know.
Right,
we-
which comes first, the chicken or the egg here?
Right.
Well, I, for one, am leaning no until I'm sold on it.
Okay.
And I don't know how you guys want it.
So we,
You know-
so we don't know how much.
We
Right, they just,
sponsorship
I mean,
would
they
be for.
base that, I think, you know, once we give them all of our, attendance and things like that, they base
And
their
they-
sponsorship dollars off of that.
And they
And
might
then
not
if we
want
can't
that to be
sell it.
public, you know?
Yeah.
And they, you know, Pendleton might not, or the Fair Board might not wanna just throw it out there for everybody to know. I don't know if that's public information or not. But anyway, okay. Well, enough said.
Well, I'd like to know Commissioner Doan's thoughts on it.
Well, that's what I was trying to get everybody
We
to speak
already
up, man.
offended me, dude. I don't know that I have enough information to give you a good answer. Taking kiddos out there, I want to make sure it's safe.
Right.
I also know that I don't want to stay past a certain point, because I've been in that back area. I want to get out of there when the events are done. Putting a bunch of alcohol in that scenario, my initial concern is how there's a whole lot more tolerance for beer than there is hard liquor. And are we going to get these people driving? You know, I mean, to me, the increased chance for people drinking and driving and having DUIs is a whole lot greater when you're consuming a higher level of alcohol. I know you don't have any control over that per se, but that's one thing that pops into my head. So I would like some information on how, and maybe if you can reach out and find somebody else that's had this sponsorship, so we can kind of base off of, you know, is the pros big enough to weigh against the cons?
Okay.
And I'm not against having alcohol out there. I just, it's got to be, you got a lot of yahoos. So,
I understand.
yeah, I mean, it's gotta be smart.
And, you know, there's about 300 people listening to this thing via TV and online, and we want to hear, I for one, Commissioner, want to hear from the citizens on how they feel about it, pro or con. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City managers report.
Mayor and Commissioners, just briefly, a few things to touch on, we did complete the rental standards ordinance tonight with a second reading. So here, early the first week of March, we will be putting together a mailer to go out to landlords that we have for the registration. We'll also be following that up with some media releases and try to get that information out to the general public. We would encourage you that if you're listening to this broadcast, that if you do have properties or a potential landlord, of no potential landlords, that you would contact the city clerk's office, and we can make certain that we get you that information so that we can get you registered. There's been, after our first two meetings, we had some glitches with the broadcast of this meeting on Channel 13. Those are thankfully have been taken care of. The one thing that if you're looking, you'll still notice it has a little bit of a grainy look to the video. That is strictly because of the differences in levels of technology that we have in this facility versus the stuff that Cox is using on their end. And so we're still continue to work with them to try to see what improvements need to be made. We're not broadcasting in high definition like these cameras and our equipment is capable of doing. They have given us some ideas of what would need to happen as far as new equipment, but their engineers are looking at ways that with the available equipment that maybe we can still produce high definition video to kind of remove some of that graininess. Some of the other comments that I've heard of are in regard to the camera angles. And as you'll see, we have the three cameras that are positioned here in the ceiling at the top of the room. They're well hidden, aesthetically pleasing, but because of the height of this room, the height of the ceilings, we have a lot of downward angles, kind of give you that fishbowl appearance a little bit. And so we struggled with that a little bit to remedy that and bring those cameras down to a more traditional level would require mounting them on our walls, and the cost of those cameras we struggle with. The difference between these being approximately $300 a piece and roughly $1,600 a piece for the ones that we would need to be able to mount on the walls, ability to zoom in, because if you're mounting a camera on the back wall at whatever that is, 75 feet, we've kind of been trying to balance cost versus quality, and so we do continue to listen to the citizens as far as their feedback as to the quality of our audio and video displays, and we'll continue to look, possibly as we discuss budgets and things like that, look at upgrading cameras and maybe mounting them on the walls. However, you give up some aesthetics when you do that, and so that's just something that we need to be mindful of. But like I said, as far as the audio and video, we have those issues. We have those issues in hand, and we'll continue to look at ways to upgrade the quality of the video too. So, couple things I might mention. The police department is going to be doing some firearms training next week. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday there'll be substantial activity on the range here on South Walnut. So, just making the public mindful of that. You're probably going to see a lot of activity and probably hear a lot of, firearms. So, not to be overly concerned with that. We did go through another round of testing this weekend for open positions, and we will be interviewing those candidates day after tomorrow, so Thursday. So we continue to work on that and try to hire the best quality individuals that we can. At our last meeting, we had discussed strategic planning and about the citizen survey, and it was kind of the consensus that maybe survey wasn't the best tool to gather information, that we should look at town hall style meetings. So I've been working with our consultant, Austin Peters Group, to move towards that. And so we have tentatively scheduled 2 town hall style meetings for March 11th and 12th. Locations are still to be determined. Have in my mind where I think they're going to be, but we haven't finalized those. And they'll be evenings, approximately 6 to 8 o'clock in the evening. And and they will be on hand to help facilitate those meetings. Also on probably that first day, the 11th, throughout the entirety of the day, the consultant will be interviewing staff, the senior department heads. As far as the strategic planning portion of that, we'll also be looking to schedule one-on-one discussions with each of you at varying times during that day. So I'll be getting in contact with you to try to figure out what your best schedule would be to meet with them. We would expect it to take roughly an hour that they visit with you, and this will all be information gathered to go towards a strategic plan. Then roughly a month after that, we'll come back. We'll meet together as a group, staff and the commission, and work more specifically on the strategic plan. So that's kind of right now is the time frame for that.
So we're not gonna spend a lot of money on this, are we? I mean,
I believe, and I don't have the contract in front of me. We budgeted $10,000 for strategic planning, and we're roughly $8,500 for this. We did one of the reasons for bringing the town halls back to back is to save, so we didn't have to renegotiate a price for the whole planning project. I can send you a copy of the agreement with the costs associated, but we're still under budget for what we had set aside for this.
The strategic planning, we do that every how often?
We were
Re-educate me on that.
2 years ago we met,
Right.
and we had hired John Devine who came in and
Okay, well, let me interrupt you one more time.
yes.
So we do this with all new commissioners every 2 years, is that how it works? That's how it's been working.
Well, now that we have a couple of new commissioners, I thought that it was time. And honestly, when we were budgeting this, there was a potential for a majority of a new commission,
Right.
depending on how the election went. So I thought it was good that we would look at some, with the new commission, we'd have a strategic plan in place. We should be looking 3 to 5 years down the road. But when you have the potential for a majority changeover in your leadership, then sometimes those things change. And honestly, I don't even remember if Mayor Bauer was what you wouldn't have been. You would have just been on the tail end of that. So we're going to see.
Well, I
some
guess
new-
it's something we need to do. Chris made the comment a few weeks ago, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on this, and I agreed with him, okay? But I didn't
Well, and
we've been through some of these studies and stuff, but I guess the commission's all in favor of doing that. Am I hearing that? I mean, is that something we talk about? I mean,
Town hall.
Oh.
well, no, the strategic planning along with the town hall for $8,500, right?
And I will tell you that I've already signed the agreement. I mean,
you
it was a budgeted item within my signing power. So
Yeah.
we have signed on for. Now if the commission would choose to stop now, I'm certain that we could negotiate a price for the work done, and we could move away from that. But I would encourage you to move forward with. I do think it's important that we're looking strategically and thinking strategically. And some of this, I know it was indicated that we think that the the survey or whatever measurement is going to show a repeat of what we learned in 2013, which it could. I do think a lot has changed since 2013. There's some areas that, as staff, see some potential projects. I think we would be good to get citizen input if they're thinking that they're a priority. And I will tell you that price range we sent out RFPs, and the price range from this 85 or 8,700 upwards of 35,000, and most were in the $20,000 range of the 6 or 8 proposals we received. After visiting with colleagues who have used Austin Peters, and they came highly recommended, and so I think we're getting good value, and we're also looking at working on our mission, vision, and value statement. And I think it's well due for an update, and to make certain that those values are still what we aspire to, and again, that's where your input will be valuable as we look at those and determine what that should be. So again, as always, it's your prerogative, but I would encourage you to follow through with it.
I think we should have talked about it a little bit before I know we talked about it a little bit, but I feel like we should have talked about it before we spent the $8,500 and got a little bit of an input from everybody.
I think it's important. I think it's hard to progress without a plan. I think once we develop a plan that's realistic and achievable, we need to make sure and stick to it.
Okay.
But I mean, it's hard to move forward if you don't know.
Let me back up and rephrase. I think we probably would have voted. I'd like to have the opportunity for this whole commission to talk about it and buy in on the $8,500. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
Well,
I would remind you that the 10,000 was budget. I mean, it was discussed in our budget
Right.
review and budget prep, so that was included.
I understand, but I think it would have been nice to talk about it. Since then, we found out our sales tax is down quite a bit. Did we not?
That we have learned that sales tax has
You know what I'm saying?
declined.
Things
Yeah.
change, and I just think as a group, we ought to talk about it. I think we probably would have voted to, said, yeah, let's spend the $8,500, but just a couple of weeks ago, Chris said, what did you say, Chris?
Well,
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember it exactly. I think you're absolutely right, Kendall. It's within your spending authority to do that, and you made the best decision based upon the budget and the how you thought best to proceed forward. And I commend you for that. But I will make this one statement. I've learned a little something about government in the last 4 years. And one thing that I've learned is government seems like they do a whole lot more studying than they do doing. And I think that you can study yourself to death. At the end of the day, the study is going to show you what I'm going to tell you right now. People want jobs, they want a clean environment, and they want a safe community. That's what they want. And the thing is I don't think that you have to go out and I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think we have to go out and continuously do a study every 2 years to figure out what the people want. That's what they want. You can ask any one of us right here and we'll tell you what they want because we hear from them every week, every day, all these other things. They want jobs, housing, place to live, not get stabbed as they're going to the mailbox. That's what they want. Streets and things like that. Basic, good, government provided services, not a handout. But, streets and place to live that you're not worried about getting hurt. That's what we need to provide. That's not hell, I don't need a study to tell me that. That's just, but I feel like we just can study every year. We're gonna do a study or a survey or this, and I just think that we need to, my opinion, we need to quit studying and start doing.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. Now, you're
Yeah.
within your authority to spend that, and hey, I'll be wherever you tell me I need to be to talk to whoever, and maybe we'll get different results, but I in my heart of heart think that we'll get the same results.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. You know, and I'll just say this again, because we've got a couple new commissioners, actually 3. You know, the first time I went through a budget deal, Chris, you were there. We spent, I don't know, hours, and we were cutting $25 here and $100 there. It was uniforms, it was all kinds of stuff. And Kendall, I guess you were there. I'm not sure if you're that first one.
No.
No, you weren't the first one.
No.
Anyway, and here we spend, and I thought that your discretionary spending, up to how much is it?
It's 25,000
Was for-
budgeted.
Yeah, okay, was for emergencies. And I just think some of these things, being our sales tax is down, and being we're having to raise our mill levy the last 2 years in a row, and being we're gonna have to raise it again, I think we ought to be talking about it a little bit. If we're all on board for doing it, fine. But these studies is a little burr under my saddle too, after we spent $25,000 to study the lights and didn't do anything with it. The street traffic control. I don't think we did much with that.
That predates me. I can't even.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I remember it was right when I was coming in.
Okay.
Okay, before you got here. So, with all due respect, I just feel like some of these things, we need to tighten our belt a little bit on. You know, these $10,000 bills here and there, you know, there's a lot of them are not within our control. Okay? We heard tonight about the power generation deal. Okay? Big numbers.
Absolutely.
Okay? But these little ones we can control.
I agree with
Okay?
Jim.
So, I just, you know, yeah, you got the authority to spend 25,000. Okay, that's for an emergency. And yes, we had it budgeted, but sometimes we might want to, before we do it, just talk about it one more time. I mean, that's my thinking, okay? I mean, you're working for us, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it, and that's one area that I think every once in a while we've had a little bit of a problem on. And we could talk about it another time, but I wanted the other committee, we don't talk about these things. The 4 state maintenance things. We did not have one conversation all week long, or I didn't anyway. Don't have time. Huh?
You were invited.
You're invited to your place. I've been to your place, Tom. Thank you. I've seen your building. Very nice. Okay? Well, okay. Well, maybe they went out there. But what I'm saying is, my point is, Tom, and the citizens of Coffeyville, we don't have a lot of time, and some of these things have to be talked about right here. Okay? So we don't have a lot of time. And we are on a little bit of a tight schedule. We've got some new buildings to pay for, sales tax issue, and I want to be conservative. That is my message to the commissioners, is we need to be conservative. Now, I think we need to go forward with the 8,500.
Well, I mean, now's the time. If the consensus is don't move forward, let me know. I'll contact them in the morning and we'll stop it and pay them what we owe them and move forward.
I got a little good out of John Devine when we did that. I'll tell everybody. I learned something, and I think there's some value there. And Justin said he thought, you know, and I think we're on board to it. When we're spending these $5,000-$10,000 bills here in the next few years, I think we just need to communicate as well as we can, Kendall. Is that fair enough?
Fair enough.
You know, that's all. And I'm capitalizing on the opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
Because I feel like our city's pretty tight right now. And I really don't want to have to raise the mill levy for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row. I'm really concerned about our sales tax collections. You know, I'm really concerned about it. So, enough said. I don't want to go on anymore. I just capitalize on it while I have the opportunity.
Okay. Well, I'll deviate just a little bit. I might, since you discussed sales tax, I will say that there is a Supreme Court case that will be moving forward this spring, probably April. It's South Dakota versus Wayfair, I believe, and it deals directly with internet sales tax. It is the opinion of most people that the Quill decision will be overturned, which would allow for collection of internet sales tax. We heard today that would be expected to be 150 to 200 million increased revenue for the state of Kansas, and then obviously the cities would see some of that, as obviously we know that people do a lot of shopping online now. That's the way of things, but in most instances they're unable to collect or not collecting sales tax. There are a few ways that we collect sales tax, but that's something that we'll be following pretty closely. It could be a tremendous benefit, not just for Coffeyville, but state of Kansas in general. And so I just, since you were discussing sales tax, I thought I'd throw that in there for you.
Good news.
The last thing I wanted to bring to your attention, we've been contacted by an individual about acquiring a piece of property that is owned by the city. It's located at 1876 County Road 5300. It's a piece of property approximately just a tick over an acre that they have interest in purchasing, and we haven't had any discussions, pricing, anything like that, but with your consensus, I'd like to have the ability for Paul Kreitz and I to visit with these individuals about the potential sale of that property, and then be able to come back and make a recommendation one way or the other.
I'm good with that.
I am also.
Okay. All right. I've just volunteered Paul to help me on this. So
Congratulations, Paul.
What did the city get for that? Like 24,000?
$27,000.
$317.53.
Yeah.
Well, I hope we don't have to. I'd like to get our money back, but I don't know. We got to look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you emailed us on it, and
yeah.
I guess my question is, when do we get to find out something before you just make the decision and do it? I mean,
you guys,
can we have some dialogue?
I don't have the authority to sell that property.
Can we get some dialogue?
Yes, it will have to. It will have to come.
I mean,
before we come forward with a recommendation, you'll know the details that are involved.
That's what I'm asking. Thank you.
So, that is all I have. I would answer questions if you had any.
No
questions?
Is this the time for the commission? No.
Nope.
I guess it's not.
Comments from the public.
I won't say nothing then.
Yeah. The public is free to comment on items not listed on the agenda. Please address comments to the commission as a body and be mindful of others who may also wish to speak by limiting your comments to 3 minutes.
I just wanted to say thank you. I talked to you about the fear that people my age have of breaking a hip if they're on a chair with wheels, and there's been a chair set up for me each time, so I'm coming to the meetings. And if you don't believe it, you can come to meetings and see my chair. Want to remind you, Lenten luncheons will start. The first one will be tomorrow at 11:30 at the Baptist Church, and the fee on that is $3. There'll be food and a program. I was listening to the national news tonight, and Dolly Parton was being honored because she has given over 1 million books to young children under kindergarten age. That is a program that we have here in Coffeyville called the Imagination Library. And for a fee, these children get a book in the mail made out to their names, not their parents' name. And have you ever seen a child get excited when they got some mail addressed to them? It's a great program, and I'm so proud that Coffeyville is involved in this. If you don't know, if you want to know more about it, see our librarian at City Librarian, because that's where the program is started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
Anyone else?
Is that, now I do have a question, is that Mary's new chair?
It is.
Yeah.
We ordered one, right?
We did, that is not it, but it,
Well, it is her chair. She's sitting.
She got, the point is, she's got her own chair coming, Mary.
got my name on this.
Don't get used to it, we got your own chair coming, a brand new one for you.
well, that one's brand new. It
Yeah.
just,
Oh, okay, well,
A different brand new one, Mary.
that was my point, thank you.
This time, no more comments from public. Comments from commission and staff.
I don't have any comments, but I have a question. Where are we at with this grant that we received on the, what is it, the Rails to Trails?
we've been waiting on the EPA. And I don't know if, Chuck, are you able to comment on that, where we're at?
I haven't had an update this week, but we're about ready to bid. It's actually a brownfields grant. It's not a grant that we are going to build credit. And I think we got the approval from KDHE to move forward with bidding.
Okay, I'll, for those that didn't hear, it is it's the EPA Brownsfield grant, and that it will be, as Commissioner alluded to, a rails to trails, because it will be using the rail spur that runs adjacent to Sherwin-Williams Park is where it will start, the trail will start, and that I will verify on the KDHE's approval to move forward. We have been delayed significantly, basically by the EPA and the approvals that they have had to go through, and some of the personnel we've been dealing with have been less than responsive over the last long period of time. But I think that's behind us, and that we have authority to move forward with that construction. Olson and Associates is the company, the engineering firm that we've been working with through this whole thing, and the design of that. So, and working with us on our Brownfields program.
So we're gonna start seeing some progress pretty relatively quick, we hope.
I will, by next commission, I'll have a better time frame for you and an outline as to what we think a construction timeline and project timeline might be.
Good.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions?
In the
Sorry.
same area, and I should have already known this, but I've seen the surveyors out by the school, out
Yes.
Green Acres and stuff. Where are we at on the sidewalks? When are they?
That will actually, I mean, we won't see construction probably happening, I would guess, late this year, maybe even into 2019, Chuck? Yeah.
Except for safe routes to school.
The safe routes to school, where a lot of preliminary work and a lot of some of those guidelines that we got to follow to meet the qualifications. So it will not be immediate construction.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, make a motion to move to executive session for non-elected personnel for the discussion of employees' contract pursuant to non-elected personnel, exception to reconvene in the commission room on or before 8:45.
Second.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Williams to recess to executive session for the discussion of an employee's contract pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception to reconvene in the commission room honor before 8:45 PM. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.